Nobody tells you that marriage changes after 60. They tell you about the wedding. They tell you about the children. They tell you about the hard years when the money is tight and the babies don't sleep and the world is demanding everything from both of you at once. They tell you about surviving that. But nobody tells you about what comes after you survive it. Nobody tells you that the marriage you built during the storm is not the same marriage you need during the quiet. And the quiet, the long, slow quiet that arrives after the children leave and the career ends and the house gets big and the calendar gets empty, that quiet is where most marriages go to either be reborn or die. And a lot of them die. Not with a fight, not with a betrayal, not with a dramatic exit. They die the way a fire dies when nobody adds wood. Slowly, in silence, while both people sit in the same room watching the flames get lower and neither one reaches for a log. Today I'm going to tell you the truth about what happens to a marriage after 60. Not the Hallmark version, not the anniversary card version, the real version. The version that nobody talks about because talking about it would mean admitting that the marriage you fought so hard to build might need to be built again, from the ground up, in your 60s, with the same person, using different tools. The first truth is that retirement is the most dangerous thing that can happen to a marriage. I know that sounds extreme, but I have watched it happen too many times to soften it. For 30 or 40 years, your marriage had a structure. He went to work, she managed the house, or they both worked, or they took turns. Whatever the arrangement was, the marriage had a schedule, a rhythm, time apart that made the time together feel valuable, space that made the closeness feel chosen. And then retirement comes, and the schedule disappears, and the rhythm stops. And suddenly, two people who spent decades operating in separate orbits are in the same room, all day, every day, with nowhere to go and nothing to do and no structure to shape the hours except each other. And that sounds romantic on paper. Finally, we have time for each other. But in reality, it is terrifying, because many couples discover in the first months of retirement that the marriage was built on the structure, not on each other. The jobs and the children and the obligations were the scaffolding, and when the scaffolding came down, the building underneath was thinner than anyone expected. I knew a couple, married 41 years, who nearly ended at 18 months after retirement. 41 years of surviving everything life threw at them, and they almost broke over breakfast. Because breakfast, which used to be a quick 10 minutes before both of them rushed out the door, became a 90-minute event with nowhere to rush to. And in those 90 minutes, they discovered that they had nothing to talk about. Nothing. The man ate his eggs and read the paper. The woman drank her coffee and looked out the window. And the silence between them, which had always been hidden by the noise of a busy life, was suddenly the loudest thing in the house. And the woman said to me, "After 41 years, I am sitting across from a stranger. I don't know this man. I know his habits. I know his schedule. I know how he likes his eggs. But I don't know him. And I am not sure he knows me." We spent 41 years being busy together, and busy together is not the same as close. I want you to hear that. Busy together is not the same as close. You can share a house and a bed and a bank account and children and grandchildren and 41 years of history and still not be close. Because closeness requires attention, and attention requires time. And for 41 years, the time went to the children and the jobs and the mortgage and the obligations. The marriage got whatever was left over, which was almost nothing. Scraps, a few minutes before sleep, a quick conversation about logistics, a shared meal eaten in front of the television. The marriage survived on crumbs for 4 decades because the crumbs were all that was available. and nobody noticed because everyone was too busy. And then retirement comes. And suddenly, there is nothing but time. And the crumbs are exposed for what they are. Crumbs, not a meal, not a feast. Crumbs. And two people who thought their marriage was solid realized that their marriage was busy. And busy and solid are not the same thing. A busy marriage looks strong because there is always movement, always something to do, always a task to share, always an obligation to coordinate. The movement creates the illusion of partnership, but partnership is not movement. Partnership is connection, and connection requires the one thing that busyness never provided: stillness, eye contact, conversation that goes deeper than what time is the appointment and did you pay the electric bill. The kind of conversation that two people had in the first year of their marriage when they talked until 3 in the morning about everything and nothing because the talking was the point. That conversation died somewhere around year 5, and nobody mourned it because there was no time to mourn. The babies needed feeding, the mortgage needed paying, and the conversation could wait. And it waited for 30 years, until both people forgot it was ever alive. I want to tell you what happens in the body when a marriage goes silent, because this is not just emotional, it is physical. The human body is designed for connection. Your nervous system expects it. Your blood pressure responds to it. Your immune system depends on it. And when the primary relationship in your life, the one person who is supposed to be your safe harbor, becomes a source of distance instead of closeness, the body registers it as a threat. Not a dramatic threat, a low-grade, constant threat, the kind that elevates your cortisol just enough, tightens your chest just enough, disrupts your sleep just enough. You go to the doctor and your numbers are off and the doctor says stress and you say, "I'm not stressed." But you are. The stress is not from the outside world. The stress is from the 10 feet between your chair and the chair of the person you stopped reaching for. The body knows. The body always knows. And the body is telling you that the marriage needs attention the same way it tells you that a wound needs cleaning. Not later, now, before the infection sets in, before the silence becomes permanent, before the two televisions become the way things are instead of the way things became. Before I share the next teaching, I need to tell you something. I am not going to be here forever, and most of what I know was never written anywhere. So I sat down and I wrote it, all of it. 20 teachings, 4 parts, in the order they were meant to be received. The ones about seeing the person you chose before the years changed everything. The ones about rebuilding what the busyness almost destroyed. The ones I have never said on camera. It is called The Native Way, and it costs less than 1 dinner you will not remember. Scan the code on your screen or look in the comments. But do not leave yet, because what I am about to say next is the part that people tell me saved their marriage. The second truth is that you married a person and then spent decades relating to a role. He was the provider, she was the caretaker. He was the fixer, she was the organizer. He was the disciplinarian, she was the comforter. Whatever the roles were, they were established early, and they ran the marriage like a machine for 30 or 40 years. And the machine worked. The bills were paid, the children were raised, the house was maintained, the holidays were hosted, the obligations were met. The machine was excellent. But the machine was not a marriage. The machine was 2 people performing functions side by side. And when the functions end, when there are no more bills that require a provider's urgency and no more children that require a caretaker's attention, the roles collapse. And the 2 people standing in the rubble of the roles look at each other and think, who are you? Not who were you? Who are you, right now, today, without the title, without the function, without the reason the machine gave you to be here? My grandmother told me something about marriage that I didn't understand until I was old enough to see it in my own life. She said, "You don't marry a person once. You marry them many times, because they change. Every decade they become someone slightly different. The woman you married at 25 is not the woman sitting across from you at 65. She has been shaped by 40 years of experience you only partially witnessed. She has thoughts you have never heard, dreams you have never asked about, fears you have never noticed. She is a whole person who has been growing and changing inside a role that kept her from showing you the growth. And now the role is gone, and the person is standing there, new, different, unfamiliar. And you have a choice. You can be frightened by the stranger, or you can be curious about the stranger. And the couples who survive after 60 are the ones who choose curious over frightened. Every time. I want to talk about the silence. Because the silence is the thing that kills marriages after 60 more than anything else. Not fighting. Silence. The couples who fight after 60 are often the couples who survive, because fighting means engagement. Fighting means you still care enough to argue. The dangerous couples are the quiet ones, the ones who have stopped fighting because they have stopped caring enough to disagree. The ones who move through the same house on parallel tracks that never intersect. She is in the kitchen. He is in the garage. She watches her shows. He watches his. They sleep in the same bed facing opposite walls. And the silence between them is not peaceful. It is resigned. It is the silence of two people who have given up on the idea that the other person is reachable. And that resignation, that quiet surrender, is the real death of a marriage. Not the affair, not the argument. The moment both people decide, without saying it out loud, that trying is no longer worth the effort. That is the death. And it happens in the silence, not in the noise. I knew a man who described his marriage after retirement as two televisions in the same room playing different channels, both on, both making noise, but not connected, not watching the same thing, not hearing the same sounds. Just two machines running side by side, producing separate realities in the same space. And he said something that broke my heart. He said, "I am lonelier married than I was when I was single. Because when I was single, I knew I was alone. Now I am alone, and there is someone in the next room who is supposed to be the solution. And the solution is reading a magazine and hasn't looked at me in 3 hours." That loneliness, the married loneliness, is one of the cruelest forms of isolation that exists. Because the cure is right there, 10 feet away, in the same house, under the same roof. And neither person can cross the 10 feet. Not because the distance is far, because the distance has been growing for decades, and 10 feet feels like 10 miles when you haven't truly walked toward each other in 20 years. So how do you fix it? How do you take two televisions playing different channels and tune them back to the same frequency? I am going to tell you what I have seen work, not in theory, in practice, in real couples, in real kitchens, in real marriages that were dying and came back to life. The first thing is the simplest and the hardest. Turn toward each other, physically, literally. When your spouse walks into the room, look at them, not past them, not through them, at them. The way you looked at them when looking at them was the most exciting part of your day. You have stopped looking, both of you. You glance, you acknowledge, you register that the other person exists, but you do not look. Looking requires attention. Looking says you matter enough for me to stop what I am doing and see you. And that small act, that turning of the head, that meeting of the eyes, that 3-second moment of genuine attention is the first log on a fire that has been dying for years. It costs nothing. It takes 3 seconds, and it tells the other person, I still see you. You are not furniture. You are not a roommate. You are the person I chose, and I am choosing you again right now, with my eyes, with my attention, with the 3 seconds it takes to look at you and mean it. The second thing is to ask a question you have not asked before. Not, how was your day? You have asked that 11,000 times, and the answer is always fine. Ask something you are genuinely curious about. What are you thinking about lately? What do you wish we did more of? Is there something you always wanted to try that we never got around to? What is the best memory you have of us? What is something I do that you wish I would stop doing? Real questions. Brave questions. Questions that require real answers. Because the silence in a marriage after 60 is not caused by having nothing to say. It is caused by having nothing safe to say. Every topic feels like a minefield or a cliché, and so the silence wins. The question breaks the silence. Not any question, a new question. One that shows the other person that you are not just occupying space, you are exploring. You are curious about who they have become. And that curiosity, expressed through a single brave question over a single cup of coffee, can open a door that has been closed for years. My grandparents were married for 57 years, and they were not a perfect couple. They argued, they had seasons of distance, they had years where the silence got heavy, but they survived all of it. And when I asked my grandfather how, he said something I will never forget. He said, I decided every morning that the woman in the next room was someone I had not finished knowing. Even after 50 years, I had not finished knowing her. And as long as I had not finished knowing her, there was a reason to stay. The day I decide I know everything about her is the day the marriage is over. Because a person you have completely figured out is a person you have stopped being curious about. And a marriage without curiosity is just a lease, two people sharing a building until the contract expires. My grandparents' contract never expired because my grandfather never stopped being curious, even when the curiosity was hard, even when the answers were uncomfortable, even when the woman in the next room surprised him with something he didn't expect after 50 years. He leaned into the surprise instead of resisting it. And that leaning, that daily act of choosing curiosity over assumption, kept two people alive to each other for 57 years. The third thing I want to tell you is this. Touch your spouse. I do not mean intimacy, I mean touch. A hand on the shoulder when you walk past. A squeeze of the fingers when you are sitting side by side. A hug that lasts 4 seconds longer than the obligatory one. Touch is the oldest language human beings have. Babies who are not touched fail to thrive, and older people who are not touched wither the same way. Your skin is starving for the hand of the person you married, and their skin is starving for yours. But somewhere along the way, the touching stopped. It stopped so gradually that neither of you noticed the last time it happened. You cannot remember the last time you reached for their hand. You cannot remember the last time they put their arm around you. You cannot remember the last time you touched for no reason except to say, I am here, and I remember that you are mine. Start touching again, not waiting for the other person to start. You start. One touch, one moment of contact. And watch what happens. Because touch does something that words cannot. Touch bypasses every argument, every resentment, every year of distance and goes straight to the body. And the body remembers. The body remembers the first time those hands held yours. The body remembers the feeling of being chosen. And one touch, after years of nothing, can wake up a memory in the body that the mind had given up on. My grandmother and grandfather touched each other constantly. Small touches, not performances, not displays of affection for an audience, private touches. A hand on the back when passing in the kitchen. A pat on the knee during conversation. Fingers intertwined while sitting on the porch, saying nothing. They were in constant physical contact, the way two trees planted close together eventually grow into each other's space. Their roots were tangled, their branches overlapped, and if you had removed one, the other would have fallen. Not because they were weak, because they had grown together. And growing together requires proximity, and proximity requires touch. And touch requires the willingness to reach for someone who you have been sitting next to, but not reaching for in years. Reach. Today. Right now. Before the distance becomes permanent. Before the 10 feet becomes uncrossable. Before the 2 televisions become the only sound in the house. Reach. I want to say something to the couples watching this together right now. And I want to say something different to the person watching this alone because their spouse is in the other room and doesn't know this video is playing. To the couples watching together, you have already done the hardest part. You sat down together. You pressed play together. You are listening together. That is a log on the fire, a real one. Keep going. Talk about what you heard tonight, not what I said, what you felt. Tell each other which part landed, which part scared you, which part you recognized in your own home. Let this teaching be the question you didn't know how to ask. To the person watching alone, I see you. I know you are watching this wondering if your marriage can still be saved. And I want to tell you that the fact that you are wondering means it can. A person who has truly given up does not watch videos about saving their marriage. A person who has truly given up has stopped looking for solutions. You are still looking, and looking is the first step toward finding. The marriage is not dead, the fire is low, and a low fire is not an out fire. One log, one look, one question. That is all it takes to find out if the ember is still warm. And if it is, you can rebuild from the ember. You do not need a bonfire. You need one warm coal and the willingness to blow on it. Gently, patiently, the way you blow on any flame you are trying to bring back to life. If what you heard today stayed with you, the book is there, The Native Way. 20 teachings, 100 pages, written the way I would speak to you if we were sitting together. Scan the Q&R code on the screen with your phone or find the link in the comments. Read one chapter. Sit with it. Now I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments, how many years have you been married and what kept you together? I read every comment. And if this is the kind of conversation you have been looking for, subscribe to this channel. We are not collecting viewers here. We are collecting people who remember. Come back next week. I am not done teaching yet.